Have you ever felt like solitude isn't a burden but a necessity? That being alone isn't about isolation but about self-discovery? In a world that glorifies social interactions, constant networking, and endless digital connectivity, the idea of solitude is often misunderstood. But Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in psychology, saw it differently. For Jung, solitude was not just an escape from others, it was a path to self-realization. He believed that true individuation, the process of becoming your most authentic self, requires stepping away from external influences, breaking free from societal expectations, and embracing the quiet within. But why? Why did Jung insist that solitude was necessary for deep psychological growth? What hidden power lies in being alone, and how can it transform your mind, your emotions, and your life? In this video, we will dive deep into Carl Jung's philosophy of solitude, why the greatest minds have always sought it, how it leads to profound self-awareness, and why it might just be the most important key to unlocking your true potential. The misunderstood power of solitude. In today's world, solitude is often mistaken for loneliness. We live in an era of constant connection, notifications, group chats, endless scrolling, where being alone is seen almost as a failure. If you're not surrounded by friends, attending social events, or engaging with an audience, society makes you feel like something is wrong. But Carl Jung saw solitude in an entirely different light. For Jung, solitude wasn't an emptiness, it was a fullness. A fullness of self-awareness, introspection, and discovery. He believed that true personal growth begins when we step away from the distractions of the outside world and dive deep into our own psyche. He argued that most people live unconsciously, trapped in the collective consciousness, a term he used to describe the shared beliefs, customs, and societal expectations that dictate how we should think, behave, and even feel. From childhood, we are conditioned to conform. We are told how to act, what to believe, and which paths to follow. We learn that success means fitting in, that happiness comes from external validation, and that being liked by others is the ultimate goal. But in this desperate need for acceptance, something crucial is lost: our individuality. We become reflections of the world around us rather than authentic expressions of who we really are. This is where solitude becomes essential. When we allow ourselves to step away from the constant noise of social interactions, something profound happens. We start to hear ourselves think. We begin to distinguish our own voice from the voices of others. We start asking questions. Do I truly believe what I've been taught? Am I living the life I want, or the one that's been handed to me? Who am I when no one's watching? For Jung, this process was the key to individuation, the journey of integrating all parts of the self, even the hidden, uncomfortable, or contradictory ones. Without solitude, we remain fragmented, unaware of our deeper motivations, fears, and desires. But solitude isn't easy. It forces us to confront the thoughts we've been avoiding, the emotions we've suppressed, and the wounds we haven't healed. This is why many people fear being alone. It's much easier to distract ourselves with endless social interactions, work, entertainment, or even toxic relationships than to sit in silence with our own thoughts. Yet Jung insisted that solitude is not about isolation. It's not about cutting off the world, but about understanding yourself deeply enough that when you do engage with others, you do so as your true self, not a projection, not a mask, but as someone fully aware of their own being. So how do we strike this balance? How do we use solitude as a tool for growth rather than as a retreat from life? Let's explore Jung's insights on the delicate dance between solitude and social engagement. The balance between solitude and society. Carl Jung never advocated for complete isolation. He didn't believe that cutting oneself off from the world was the answer. Instead, he saw solitude as a tool, a necessary retreat to strengthen the self before engaging meaningfully with others. But here's the paradox. While solitude is essential for self-discovery, humans are still inherently social beings. So, how do we find the right balance? Jung believed that to have authentic relationships, we first needed to develop a strong sense of self. Without solitude, our interactions with others often become shallow, dictated by external expectations rather than genuine connection. Many people fall into the trap of performing in social situations, saying what is expected, agreeing with the majority, or adapting their personality to fit in. But Jung argued that true relationships, whether friendships, romantic partnerships, or even casual interactions, must be built on authenticity, not conformity. To achieve this, he encouraged a cyclical approach, periods of solitude to reconnect with oneself, followed by periods of social engagement where one interacts with the world as their true self. This means taking time away from distractions, not to escape life, but to reflect on it. It means spending time alone not because you dislike people, but because you value self-awareness. And when you do return to society, you do so with a sense of confidence, independence, and inner clarity. But here's where it gets tricky. Modern society often penalizes solitude. If you're someone who prefers deep conversations over small talk, who values alone time over constant socializing, or who enjoys thinking rather than always doing, you might be labeled as antisocial, distant, or even arrogant. But Jung would argue that these labels come from people who haven't done the work of understanding themselves. In reality, the ability to be alone is a sign of strength. It means you're not dependent on the validation of others. It means you're not afraid of your own thoughts. And most importantly, it means that when you do engage with people, you do so not out of fear of loneliness, but out of genuine connection. So, what does this look like in practice? How do you create a life where solitude and society exist in harmony? Jung suggested a few key principles. Schedule time for solitude. Just like we make time for work, friends, or entertainment, we must actively prioritize time alone for deep thinking, reading, and self-reflection. Even if it's just a few hours a week, this time allows for mental clarity. Surround yourself with meaningful connections. It's not about having a large social circle. It's about having a real one. Jung believed in quality over quantity. A few deep, authentic relationships are far more valuable than endless superficial connections. Engage with society, but on your terms. Socializing should be a conscious choice, not an obligation. If an interaction drains you, if it feels forced or inauthentic, Jung would suggest stepping back and reassessing why you feel the need to be there. Use solitude to strengthen your mind, not escape reality. There's a fine line between solitude and isolation. Solitude is active. It's about learning, growing, and reflecting. Isolation, on the other hand, is about avoidance. Jung urged people to use alone time wisely, as a tool for self-empowerment, not self-pity. Jung's philosophy teaches us that when solitude and social life are balanced, we become more independent, more self-aware, and ultimately, more capable of forming meaningful connections. The goal is not to avoid people, but to interact with them as a complete, self-actualized individual. But there's one last step: understanding what happens when solitude is ignored, when we never take the time to reflect on who we really are. This leads us into our next section. What happens when we lose touch with ourselves in the pursuit of constant social validation? The dangers of ignoring solitude. In a world that constantly demands our attention, solitude is often seen as a luxury, something we indulge in only when everything else is taken care of. But Carl Jung warned that neglecting solitude comes at a great cost. When we fail to spend time alone with our thoughts, we become disconnected from ourselves. We start to live for others, not for ourselves. Think about how modern life is structured. Social media keeps us in a constant loop of comparison. We seek validation through likes, comments, and approval from people who often don't even know us. We chase external success, money, status, recognition, because we believe it will make us happy. But in doing so, we ignore the most important question: who am I really? Jung believed that when people fail to embrace solitude, they fall into what he called mass-mindedness, a state where individuals become mere reflections of society rather than unique, self-actualized beings. Instead of forming our own beliefs, we adopt the opinions of the majority. Instead of making decisions based on our personal values, we conform to what is expected of us. And instead of pursuing what truly fulfills us, we chase after what looks good to others. This kind of life is deeply unfulfilling. When we don't take time to reflect, to question, to be alone with our own minds, we become trapped in a cycle of distraction and dissatisfaction. We feel empty, restless, always searching for something more, but we don't even know what that something is. Jung saw this happening in his time, and it's even more relevant today. With 24/7 connectivity, people are more distracted than ever. They fear solitude because they associate it with loneliness. But Jung made a crucial distinction. Loneliness is the absence of connection, but solitude is the presence of self-awareness. You can be alone without being lonely. In fact, you can feel lonelier in a crowd of people who don't understand you than you ever would in solitude. So what happens when solitude is ignored for too long? We lose our sense of identity. Without solitude, we never truly understand who we are. We become a collection of societal expectations, living lives that don't reflect our true desires. We become emotionally dependent on others. When we don't spend time alone, we rely too much on external validation. We feel anxious when we're not getting enough attention, and we let others dictate our self-worth. We struggle to make independent decisions. Without deep reflection, we don't develop a strong inner voice. We seek constant advice, second-guess ourselves, and fear making choices that go against the norm. We live superficial lives when we prioritize socialization over self-reflection. We engage in surface-level interactions. We struggle to form deep, meaningful connections because we haven't even connected with ourselves. Jung's message is clear. Without solitude, we become lost in the noise of the world. We become puppets of society, disconnected from our true selves. But the good news is, this cycle can be broken. The path to self-awareness begins the moment we choose to step back, reflect, and embrace solitude as a necessary part of life. In our final section, we'll discuss how to embrace solitude in a world that constantly pulls us away from it, and how doing so can transform your life. Embracing solitude, the path to self-discovery. If solitude is so essential for self-awareness and personal growth, then why do so many people avoid it? The truth is, solitude is uncomfortable at first. When we step away from distractions, we are left with only ourselves. No social media, no endless conversations, no external validation, just our raw, unfiltered thoughts. And that can be terrifying. Carl Jung understood this fear. He knew that when we are alone, we are forced to confront the parts of ourselves that we often ignore. The insecurities, the regrets, the unspoken fears, the unresolved questions about our purpose and identity. Solitude brings them all to the surface. But instead of running from this discomfort, Jung encouraged us to face it head-on. Because within this discomfort lies the key to true self-understanding. The modern world does everything in its power to keep us from experiencing solitude. The constant buzz of notifications, the endless stream of entertainment, the social pressure to always be available. All of it keeps us distracted, keeps us from looking inward. But what if we stop running? What if, instead of seeking external noise, we turned inward and embraced the silence? 1. Spend time alone without distractions. Most people are never truly alone. Even when they are physically by themselves, their minds are occupied by their phones, music, or constant stimulation. Challenge yourself to sit in silence for 10 to 15 minutes a day. No phone, no TV, just you and your thoughts. Observe what comes up. What are you afraid to think about? What emotions do you avoid? This is where self-discovery begins. At first, it might feel strange, maybe even uncomfortable. You might find yourself reaching for your phone out of habit. But the more you practice sitting in silence, the more you will realize that your mind is like an uncharted ocean. Beneath the surface, there are thoughts, ideas, and emotions you have never truly explored. And in that exploration, you will start to understand yourself in ways you never have before. 2. Journal your thoughts and feelings. Jung believed that writing was a powerful tool for self-reflection. When you put your thoughts on paper, you externalize them. You gain clarity and control over what once felt overwhelming. Start by writing down your thoughts each morning or night. Don't censor yourself. Let your mind spill onto the page. You might be surprised at what you discover. Patterns will emerge. Certain emotions or fears that you've been suppressing will come to light. Maybe you'll notice that the same anxieties keep showing up in different ways. Or perhaps you'll uncover an inner voice that's been trying to tell you something for years. This process of self-exploration is what Jung referred to as individuation, the journey toward becoming your truest self. 3. Seek depth over distraction. Not all solitude is the same. Sitting alone scrolling through social media is not the same as purposeful solitude. Instead of distracting yourself, use alone time to engage in deep thinking, reading, or creative pursuits. Jung often emphasized the importance of exploring philosophy, psychology, and the unconscious mind, activities that enrich your inner world rather than numb it. Instead of binge-watching meaningless content, why not use your solitude to reflect? Instead of mindlessly consuming, why not create something meaningful? The difference between those who feel lost in their own minds and those who thrive in solitude comes down to this. Are you using your alone time wisely? 4. Learn to enjoy your own company. Many people fear being alone because they don't like themselves. But solitude isn't about isolation. It's about forming a deep relationship with yourself. Learn to appreciate your own presence. Take yourself out on a walk. Go to a cafe alone. Travel solo. The more you do things by yourself, the more comfortable you become in your own skin. Eventually, you'll reach a point where you no longer need constant validation from others. You'll feel at peace in your own company, and that is a rare and powerful thing. Jung believed that those who embrace solitude gain a stronger sense of self. They don't constantly seek approval from others. They don't feel lost when they are alone. Instead, they become their own anchor, their own guide. 5. Meditate on your inner world. Jung's work on the unconscious mind suggests that much of who we are lies beneath the surface of conscious awareness. Meditation is one way to access these deeper layers. Take time each day to sit in silence, focus on your breath, and observe your thoughts without judgment. You might uncover emotions, memories, or patterns that shape your life in ways you never realized. The more you do this, the more you will begin to notice the unconscious forces that drive your behavior, your fears, and your desires. And once you become aware of these forces, you gain the power to change them. The reward of embracing solitude. At first, solitude might feel isolating, but over time, it transforms into a source of strength. The more time you spend with yourself, the less dependent you become on external validation. You develop a clearer sense of who you are, what you want, and what truly matters to you. Jung believed that those who embrace solitude are the ones who achieve true self-realization. They don't blindly follow the crowd. They don't feel lost in the chaos of life. Instead, they walk their own path, with confidence, clarity, and a deep understanding of their inner world. So, the next time you find yourself reaching for distractions or fearing time alone, pause. Ask yourself, am I running from my thoughts, or am I ready to face them? Because when you stop fearing solitude, you open the door to a stronger, wiser, and more self-aware version of yourself. Final thought. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is a tool, a gateway to understanding who you really are. If you learn to embrace it, you will never feel lost again. You will develop a sense of inner stability that no external chaos can shake. The world is noisy. Everyone is shouting their opinions, their expectations, their judgments. But when you take a step back, when you allow yourself to be truly alone, you will hear something far more valuable, your own voice. And that voice, it's the only one that truly matters. If this message resonated with you, don't just let it fade away. Start embracing solitude today. Spend a few minutes in silence, reflect on your thoughts, and take one small step toward understanding yourself better. Your journey to self-discovery begins now. But remember, you don't have to do it alone. If you found value in this video, make sure to subscribe for more deep insights into psychology, philosophy, and personal growth. Hit the like button if this spoke to you, and share your thoughts in the comments. What does solitude mean to you? Most people avoid the path of self-awareness. Be different. Be the one who takes control of their mind and their life. Let's build a community of thinkers, seekers, and those who dare to question the world. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss out on powerful ideas that can change your life. Your mind is your greatest asset. Start investing in it today.